director of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. Tom King joins us on the show. How are you, Tom?
Pretty good, Cam. Long time no talk. Like yesterday
no
or
kidding, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I know. Listen, there's always something to talk about.
Oh, it's New York.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this story out of the Syracuse paper where they point out the vast majority of arrests under the New York SAFE Act have been for crimes that were already illegal before the New York SAFE Act.
That's true. There, and I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but there have been a bunch of them that the state police and the arresting officers have charged them under the previous Pataki administration laws rather than the SAFE Act. And in some instances, the district attorneys have, in fact, gone back to those laws to charge.
Yeah. So, Tom, let me just ask you here. I mean, based on what you're seeing, does the New York SAFE Act, has this made a significant difference in public safety in New York?
No, it's made a significant difference to the legal and lawful gun owner of New York because they're the ones that have been made criminals out of this. There is nothing that's illegal under the SAFE Act that wasn't illegal under the previous penal code. The only difference is that we have the possibility of an ammo check and database, and we have removed one of the items that would make a firearm a assault weapon. So, rather than two things, you only need one thing to make it an assault weapon.
Right. Okay. Which again, look, I mean, we can go through the crime stats in New York, but the FBI reports that last year, same as the year before last, all across the country, there were more murders in which blunt objects, fists, hammers were used, in which knives, as opposed to homicides in which all long guns, rifles and or shotguns, were used. So you talk to any, you talk to any law enforcement officer, you talk to anybody who's in criminal justice, you ask them about the effectiveness of banning semi-automatic rifles to reduce crime, and they'll tell you it won't, because these aren't guns that are used in a lot of crimes anyway. So even if gun bans themselves were effective, a gun ban of guns that aren't used in crimes wouldn't be. Now, we can talk about the overall effectiveness of gun bans too, but so now here's the thing, and I know I was actually talking with a guy who runs a restaurant down here in Farmville, Virginia, Tom, who's from New York State, and we were talking about the difference between New York City. Yeah, right. Well, and we were talking about the difference between New York City and the rest of the state. And he says, people forget. If you say you're from New York, they automatically think you're from New York City. He says, people forget. It's a big state. There are a lot of people who don't live in New York City there.
That's right. And, there are a lot of very, very pro-gun citizens and politicians from upstate New York who get the anti-gun legislation pounded down their throat by the vast majority of people who live in New York City, who have no clue to what a gun is other than they see it being held sideways on a TV program.
So, look, I don't expect the New York Times to trumpet this news, Tom, but I'm curious if the Times will even report on these crime stats, on the fact that, the vast majority of these arrests, you don't even think it won't be news that's fit to print?
Oh, no. I mean, if past history is any indication, they will not even talk about it. I mean, that's been going on for years and years and years, and it's ludicrous. The gray lady is getting gray and dirty because no one will talk about the truth. They all have a political agenda that they're pushing, and that's including the New York Times, and that's what they do.
Yeah, and I just did a quick news search, and what I find right now is the Post-Standard in Syracuse, New York, is the only paper that's reported this.
Yep.
That's it.
That's right. Well,
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
no, that's typical in New York State. I mean, outside of a few local papers and a few sportsman papers, none of the media, the larger mainstream media reports any of this. There's a couple of television stations that will give us a fair and honest appraisal of what's going on, and will also, ask our opinion and portray it in a good light rather than trying to make us look like crazy. And the Time Warner Cable News Channel is one of those. To be perfectly honest with you.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
They're based down there in the. I was gonna say they're not. They're not in the in the. They're down there in the New York City part of the state, right?
They do have a branch down there, but it's run separately from upstate. Okay. The people in New York. I mean, anything that goes on in Albany that they would record here in Albany is broadcast through the rest of the state, with the exception in New York, New York City. On occasion, it would be broadcast down there, but most of the time they skip it because it doesn't necessarily correspond with their beliefs down there.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. I mean, look. This is a real issue because as gun owners in New York, look, this is something that you should be talking to non-gun owners about. And yet, again, if the information isn't out there, if there's one paper in the state that's reporting on this, when every paper in the state has access to this information, that's an issue. So, first of all, besides encouraging folks to go to the Syracuse paper and share the story on your Facebook page and your social media, it really, I think, underscores the importance, Tom, of again, one-on-one communication between gun owners and the people that they interact with when they're talking about politics, when they're talking about the elections this year, when they're talking about the laws in New York, because you cannot expect that a non-gun owner in New York State is going to have the same amount of information that you do about the gun laws in New York.
That's exactly right. And, another important source is your show, Cam. And I'm not saying that because I'm on it, but you report it like it is. And, a lot of people listen to it and get the scoop from you. And I think you're just doing a great service for the gun owners of the United States.
Well, listen, I really appreciate that. And that's one of the things that, I hope that people will do is, take some of the information that you or other guests or I provide, and then, share that information, make it again, take it with you. And, when you're having these conversations with gun control advocates in New York, and they say, well, I'm glad the SAFE Act's here, then you can say, did you know? I mean, you can say you're happy, but did you know that over 1,900 of the less than 2,100 arrests were for things that were already crimes before the SAFE Act was passed? So what do you think the SAFE Act is doing? I hope that, again, we can start to, we're the ones that are going to have this conversation. It's not going to be media-driven in New York. It's going to have to be gun owner-driven. And, again, I think it's going to have to be, it should be driven in a way that's designed to give information to people who don't have it. And I think it's a shame. I think it's absurd that the New York Times isn't reporting on stuff like this. But it shows, again, the weakness of their argument.
Absolutely, the weakness of their argument, and the fact that the paper of record is really no longer the paper of record unless you happen to agree with what they're talking about. It's not for everybody's people. It's not the people. It's not the paper for the people of the United States anymore.
Absolutely. Tom, listen, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's always good talking to you, and hope we get to see you again soon.
Oh, I think you probably will. I always look forward to it. Cam, you take care, please, and keep on doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and we'll talk again very soon, I know. Tom King,